because in 38 there was the beginning of possibly war. There was war talk. And I didn't know that much about war talk. But things were changing. And I used to go, I was allowed to go and visit my Aunt Antonia. My Aunt Antonia was in charge of a villa, which was a pretty big house belonging to a wealthy person, all these wonderful things. But on the way to the villa, I could always go past the tennis plots. There was a place where they played tennis. It was a beautiful place. It was almost down a little, like it was it was down in a sinkhole. And I noticed at one point I was going out to visit my Aunt Antonia in the wealthy section. And I went past the tennis place. And as I went past the tennis place, there was no tennis place. Instead, there was something going up, and I had no idea what it was. It looked like a big square thing made of blocks and cements. It certainly didn't look like some impressive type of building or anything. It was just coming up out of that place. So when I got home from there, I asked my stepfather, and he said, "That's a bunker." And that was a new word to me. What's a bunker? He says, "Well, that is a place where you can go to be safe if there are air raids." And we're now talking about airplanes and bombs, and there's no war. And I thought maybe we were just a little bit hasty in having all this stuff going on when nothing really was happening. Things were happy. We had enough to eat. I had a good school. There were fun things. Everything was well. I had my classes I was a Catholic. At Mannheim, for every Catholic block that you went, there was another block that would be Protestant. So some of my girlfriends were Protestant, and my parents didn't see that way. If you were not a Catholic, you were a heathen. And that translates well, it translates pagan. You were pagan. If you were not Catholic, you were pagan. And there were, of course, the Jewish people. And across from G6-Straitzing, there was the old ghetto. It was a fascinating place. It was 2 blocks in one, and it was going 2 blocks this way and 2 blocks this way. But the wonderful thing about it was, if you went on the other side, if you went around and went on that street down that block, and you went in, you could walk your way all the way through and come out in the center on a little street that went right in this way, opened up. And so this is how the ghetto opened up to the outside world from in there. And there were Jews when we first started to live there. There was a Jewish family. He was a shoemaker. The little girl was my age, and she was just beautiful. And then they had a 3 or 4-year-old. The older girl had dark curly hairs, but the little one had the prettiest blonde hair. And they were there, and there was talk about Jews. There was talk about the evil that came with the Jews. The Jewish business was so corrupt that they won't kill you physically, but they will make it impossible for you to live or earn a living. They will take any way that they can, they will take your money. And so there was a feeling of not exactly dislike, but almost fear you were afraid of that. The Jewish people were not, did not share our sense of values. They practiced a different religion, but on the other hand, they were not morally correct as we were supposed to be. And so you had a feeling of fear. It was something that you felt, it was a dread to your existence. And that never entered into my mind until somewhere close to 1939, at that point when one morning I got up and I got out and I looked across the street, and someone had painted Jude, Jew, in great big letters trimming down in red colors. It looked almost like it had been painted in blood. And I asked my mother, and she said, whoever does that probably doesn't know what he or she is doing. They're doing something that they think is getting attention from the people that they like to get attention from. So it was dismissed from my mind. We didn't talk about it. It wasn't much later that I went to school, and before school let out, my stepfather was there and requested that I would come home. And so we went home. And we went through the street where most of the big stores were, close to, there was one in particular that was known to be Jewish. All the windows were broken out and people were looting, and there was all kinds of stuff. There was glass all over. And I asked my stepfather what that was all about. He said, that happened last night. That was the night of the breaking glass. And he would not talk further about it. He says, we don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about it some other time. I still insisted, and he said, how would you like to go to Heidelberg? And of course Heidelberg would get me off it, and he knew that. So he promised me a trip to Heidelberg. And he says after that we could discuss that. And so I put it out of my mind. There was, at that time, there was no knowledge within the area where I grew up of concentration camps. After a couple of months or so, I noticed that the shoemaker wasn't there anymore. But no one was asking any questions, and no one was asking, and no one was answering. It was just like you're going into a haze, a fog, where nothing was there. You wouldn't know.